If you've ever worked with a classic database, you're probably familiar with the idea of one central, powerful server handling everything. And it's clean, it's organized, but when you're talking about the massive scale of the modern internet, it just hits a wall. So let's dive into what happens when we have to move beyond that single point of control.
So we all get the basic client-server model, right? Your browser, the client, asks a big, powerful server for a web page, and that server sends it back. It works great for millions of things, but it's all built on one core assumption: that one server is enough.
Okay, think of a centralized system like a giant library, but with just one super overworked head librarian. Every single request, finding a book, checking one out, putting one back, it all has to go through that one person. They know where everything is, and they have the final say. It's simple for sure, but what happens when that library gets crazy popular?
And that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? At what point does that beautiful simplicity actually become a huge liability? Well, it turns out there are a couple of major breaking points that you hit pretty fast.
So here's the deal. This model has two massive weaknesses. First, it's incredibly brittle. If our head librarian gets sick and goes home for the day, the whole library shuts down. That's your single point of failure. And second, it's a bottleneck. No matter how fast that one librarian is, they can only handle so many people at once. The system just can't grow to meet huge worldwide demand.
So to get around these problems, we need a totally different way of thinking. Instead of trying to build one infinitely powerful librarian, we have to change the structure of the library itself. And this brings us to the whole idea of a distributed system.
So instead of one giant central library, imagine a worldwide network of thousands of tiny library branches. Now, each local librarian only has a partial view. They only know about the books in their own little branch. But, and this is the key, they're all connected and they can work together. As a team, they can find any book anywhere in the system without any single head librarian calling all the shots.
What's so interesting here is how it breaks down this fundamental shift in thinking. Centralized systems are what we call asymmetric. Clients ask, servers answer, they have very different jobs. But in a distributed, or peer-to-peer setup, every single piece can be an equal. They're all peers. So instead of just one-to-one messages, they can broadcast to the whole group. The brain of the system isn't in one spot anymore. It's spread out across everyone.
And hey, this isn't just some abstract theory. It's powering some really incredible stuff in the real world. I mean, look at SETI at home. It literally turned millions of regular home PCs into a single planet-sized supercomputer to search for signals from space. Or think about an automated highway. Cars aren't asking some central tower if they should brake, no way. They talk directly to the cars next to them, sending an emergency stop signal down the line way, way faster than any human could ever hope to react.
Okay, so we get what they are, but what really makes them so powerful? Why go through all this extra complexity? Well, it really boils down to three key advantages that this kind of architecture unlocks.
The first and maybe the most mind-bending advantage is scalability. And this next quote, it just perfectly captures the magic behind how these systems work in a way that's, well, it's totally counterintuitive.
Think about a file-sharing system like BitTorrent for a second. In the old centralized world, the more people who wanted a file, the slower the server would get for everyone. But with a distributed model, every single person downloading that file also becomes a source for other people to download from. More demand actually creates more supply. The system gets stronger and faster the more popular it gets. It's wild.
All right, the second huge advantage is resilience, or if you want to get technical, you'd call it fault tolerance. We've already talked about how fragile a centralized system can be, and this is the elegant solution to that problem.
The payoff here is just huge. So remember our library network? If one of those branches in, say, Toledo has a flood and goes offline, the rest of the system barely even notices. The other branches just route requests around the problem. There is no single point of failure to take down. It makes the whole thing incredibly tough and robust.
And finally, let's talk about the money. Building and maintaining one gigantic, super reliable, fault-tolerant server is, well, it's insanely expensive. But the distributed approach gives us a much cheaper way to get to that same level of massive computing power.
Just look at this number. Back in 2008, the SETI at Home network hit over 364 teraflops of processing power. Now, to put that into perspective, building a single supercomputer that powerful would have cost an absolute fortune. But SETI at Home did it just by borrowing tiny, unused slices of power from millions of cheap, ordinary computers. It's the ultimate example of doing something massive on a shoestring budget. So when you put it all together,
The scalability, the resilience, the cost-effectiveness. You start to see why this architecture is quietly running so much of our modern world, often right under our noses.
Now, let's be real. This isn't a free lunch. Programming and managing a system with thousands of independent parts is way, way more complicated than dealing with a single server. But that complexity, that's the price you pay for systems that can scale up to billions of users and shrug off failures that would completely destroy a centralized design.
And that's really the big idea to walk away with. You know, from the Internet of Things to blockchain to huge online games, pretty much all of the big challenges of the future are problems of scale and resilience. So the principles of distribution, they aren't some niche computer science topic anymore. They're actually becoming the foundation of the very world we're building.
Hey, if you enjoyed this look into the invisible architecture that powers so much of our lives, do us a favor and hit that like button, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more explainers just like this one. Thanks for watching.